Hey everyone, welcome to the video. So we ran into a bit of a problem the last few days, and that's bomber hits are pretty tough to pull off, especially with doing hits from both sides and all these flares clearing mines. So we really try to see if there's any other troop that can also work. And we might have found it with RCs. We barely just max them out right now, but their advantage comes from not worrying about mines, and the deck layout too. They can just fly over gaps. And the one thing we gotta change if we're running RCs is going from building health to troop damage. It does mean that our base gets a lot weaker, but hopefully our offense pulls through in times. We're also noticing a couple differences in bases, because a lot of RC and Seeker players means that you want ERs to not be too clumped together. And another thing is having more mines and mortars towards the back, because a lot of laser players like going from the right side. So just making their lives a little bit tougher. But right now, we'll try it a few hits. This one being 100 building health. And in most cases, still taking a few squad bombers because they have their separate flares. You have a bit more control over them. But on almost every 7 ER, flaring 6 RCs towards the back. You don't need HCs because you got tiny shocks, normal shocks, and usually that's plenty. GBE isn't too much of an issue. And the drop, you do want to do a few smokes. So I like doing one early to all the RCs and right away send that flare. So get all the 6 RCs down, get that flare going, and then just a few smokes, avoiding those boom cannons. And here we can do one shock right there, a couple more on the far buildings. And before the flare expires, dropping bullet and the other bombers. Get one more shot going on that side, can do a medkit too. And these bombers, kinda doing okay. Sometimes if there's rockets that can be annoying, ideally you want to try just medkitting them. Don't want to waste too much GB. And here you can move, let's say the shield bomber on the left side. We were a bit late on that tiny shock, so always watching those timers. It is a full 30 seconds, but still it can run out pretty fast. Let's get another medkit on those RCs. And these bombers should be fine. Can maybe do a few critters right there. And doing a few critters also means that they can finish off that ER. So you can flare a bit sooner. Straight on these bottom 2 ERs. One tiny shock on that boom cannon. And you see the critters working up top. Even though the rocket's hitting, it's not too much damage. And then just flare the last ER. One more shock, maybe a few critters. Because our barrage is only level 1, so it's not going to do too much. And pulling a 218. So maybe around 220s now on those 100 building health. And see if it's enough. But looks like it is. And could even be a bit faster if we got those tiny shocks and that boom cannon early. But again, the idea is you're flaring RCs towards the backside and deciding how to use your normal shocks versus tiny shocks. Your normal shocks only last 10 seconds, so you want to do them on buildings where you know the RCs are going to clear kind of early. So these front ones right here. And all the while these bombers getting those jobs done. And that's why the squad bombers are so good, because even while the RCs are doing their thing, you can flare one of those guys to a different ER. With our extra tokens, we decided we're not really gonna max rockets right away. Instead we'll do a few things like max critters, GBE, and building damage. So still a while from max rockets, but since we're switching to a more offense strat, it's just the way things go. Got another match right here. This one being another 100 building health, a little different kind of base. Since there's only one ER on this side, can only do one bomber. instead taking 7 RCs towards the right. And it does look pretty nasty with all those cannons, boom cannons, but we do have a lot of GBE. So maybe going with like one shock in these early buildings, tiny shock those guys. And we should be out of range of that boom cannon for quite a while. But once we do get in range, then we can just do normal shocks. And then one bomber takes care of this ER, and the RCs go back for those two. So always starting with the RCs, get 7 out there, and then sending that one flare. You can do a couple smokes, avoiding that boom cannon. And as we get closer, do one shock and 2 tiny shocks. And then a bullet and one bomber on that side. See if we need another shock, but looks like the machine gun goes down, so that's pretty good. And just going a little back and forth between that one bomber and the RCs. Like we need a medkit right there. And then pretty soon, maybe shocking that boom cannon. We could do another tiny shock there and then a normal shock. Got that boom cannon. We did miss this one, which kind of sucks. So lost 1 RC. This side will move that squad bombers over there. And maybe a bit late, but just in time. So just going back and forth between that one bomber and those RCs. And when the bottom ear goes down, send one flare. I think we can afford just one more shock, but looks like we don't need it. That ER went down, so as soon as this one goes down, we flare the last 2. So waiting a few more seconds, then sending that flare. And especially towards the end, then you can see we have plenty of GB. Can even do some critters to start working on that ER. Even a little bit of damage helps out. And not quite 220, we lost a 1 more RC, but 214. Sometimes it's not fast enough, but I think for the most part, it's not too bad. So like we'll see over here, that 214 is pulling through. And I think these RC hits, well, they do seem a bit easier than bombers. Because even though you're still looking at both sides, like one squad bomber and the RCs, it's just not worrying about critter launchers, any mines, just nailing those shocks and tiny shocks. But on this space here, we'll go back to 2 squad bombers. We'll send 6 RCs on the right side. And we could do maybe 1 bomber right here, and then bullet 1 other bomber on this side. We'll delay this one a bit because we need some GBE for dealing with that rocket, mortar, and boom cannon. But at least right now, starting with the right side. So 1 smoke and 6 RCs. And right away sending that flare. Get 2 more smokes after that. 1 shock repeat should be enough. We'll do just bullet 1 bomber on this side. And then waiting a few more seconds. Getting the other shot going. Do want to heal up that RC. And might do 1 critter for that sniper. Maybe distract that rocket a bit. And now that we do have some GBE, can do that squad bomber, flare that mortar, and 1 more critter. On this side, tiny shock and 1 medkit. Don't know how those bombers got damaged, but can heal them up. And now move those bombers to this ER, shock that shock launcher. And then just watching this side, want to tiny shock that boom cannon. But you see RCs working on the top side, bombers on those 2 ERs. And then pretty soon we can just start flaring. Get that flare going now. And since there's buildings clumped up, we can just do a normal shock. Maybe 1 tiny on that rocket. And then get 1 more flare going. 1 shock and a normal one. And even with 100 building health, this base getting around a 230. And even for no IT, not losing too many troops. We kind of sacrifice the 2 squad bombers, but it's only 2 boats, so should be enough for a good number of hits. And taking that win. And another benefit of RCs, being a lot more stable too. Because with bomber hits you can do the same hit on the same base, one time get a crazy fast time, and the other not even finish. And it's really not fun when you have that inconsistency. With RCs, if they're a bit more stable, then you can keep on replicating it, do a good push. Got pretty much the same kind of base. He does have 50 building health, so we should try to be a bit faster. Also no rockets, so maybe even a secret player. But we'll do the same hit. So smoke 6 RCs, send that flare with the 2 more smokes. And we'll do 1 shock right there. Since there's no rockets, we'll do all the bombers at the same time. And maybe even right now doing a few tiny shocks. We could do a critter on that boom cannon pretty soon. And then clear some mines for those guys there. It's annoying we lost a few bombers, but it might be okay still. Let's flare down that boom cannon. And pretty soon flare the other bombers to this ER. Get 1 shot before we forget. And just kind of letting it go. In fact, we might have enough GBE to critter out this ER. So we'll do 3 critters and 1 shock. Most of the RC is going the wrong way, but I think now they're pulling on through. Get tiny shock that shock launcher, and get some more critters out. Losing 1 RC, it's a little messy hit, but you see with 50 building health, we gotta be a bit faster, and getting that 240. So seeing what time he's gonna do. So I guess not seekers, but maybe a laser hit on the right side. Looks like not too many lasers, so that's why we put a bunch of mortars and mines on the right side. We didn't face too many of those smaller deck layouts, but on the smaller compacts, maybe running like 2 HCs, 6 RCs can still get the job done. But after this hit, should be enough for 22, getting that chest. And doesn't really get us anything. Like even if we wanted to get Seekers, Lasers, or Kavan, it doesn't really help out our hits. What we could do instead is just save for max rockets. Might still take a good few days, but even with our 50 building health, max rockets can still do something. Especially against those bomber and laser hits, cause no matter how much building health you have, we all got the same building damage. But a pretty big fan of RCs and still making the squad bombers a bit useful. And that's gonna be it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.